Hi, I'm indie fantasy author Melinda Kucsera. Welcome back to another episode of Fantasy Lore and More. Today's guest couldn't make it, so I thought I would spend a little bit of time talking to you about the first book in a series that is okay. So my birthday is actually Sunday, March 10th, and on that day, the fourth book in a series that I started in 2019 for a USA Today best-selling box set is coming out, and I thought it would be fun to talk about it. I haven't talked a lot about that. I don't think I've talked about that book much at all on here. So sit back and relax and tell you about a strong woman who gets caught up in an impossible situation involving magic, but she also makes some friends along the way and has a wild adventure while trying to save her daughter. And the fourth book, I'm so excited for it to come out and for everyone to read it. I've been working on it for a long time, and it wraps up so many things, and we get out of the wild adventure and into something that I really enjoy, which is all the shenanigans under Mataredrin. If anyone's read the Cursebreaker series, you know how much I love that stuff. And I very much enjoy the Rangers trying to talk to anyone or get information out of anyone and all of the shenanigans that go into that when certain people don't want to report to them and explain where they've been and what they were doing. So, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back and talk to you a bit about the first book in the Robin of Larkspur series before we talk about any of the other ones. So the first book is called Hunter's Night. And Hunter's Night it was meant to be low fantasy, but I can't seem to write anything that doesn't involve ridiculous amount of magic and people who use it. So I'm sure the characters had a good laugh as they were leading me around and completely flipped the idea that I had on its head. So let's do the blurb. They took her daughter. Now she's hunting them. They kidnapped her baby and vanished without a trace. With no clues to follow and an injured companion to save, Robin must undertake a difficult journey to get help. But a wintry wonderland fraught with dangers lies between her and the one person who could find her daughter. Robin will do anything to save her baby, even become one of the hunted in a deadly game. Hunter's Night is the first book in the epic fantasy adventure series, Robin of Larkspur, starring a woman warrior who could become the most skilled witch of their world has ever known, but only if she survives run-ins with shapeshifters, pagan deities, demons, and other supernatural creatures who will try to stop her from fulfilling her destiny. Get Hunter's Night now. So that's the blurb, and the blurb was obviously written after I wrote the book and after they took the low fantasy idea of a woman who has no magic trying to find her daughter and stuffed as much magic as you possibly could into this thing. So let's read chapter 1. So chapter 1. Warrior, mother. She was both now, but could she continue to be? Robin pondered that as she ignored the snores of her tent mate. Outside, night fell and snow too, but she was warm enough under 3 blankets. Robin turned the broken arrow over and listened to the wind whistling through the nearby mountain pass as she ran her finger along the crack in the arrow's shaft. 3 months ago, she'd given birth to the healthy baby girl asleep in the wicker bassinet to her left. But she felt like this arrow, broken inside. End over end, the arrow spun in her hands. Maybe broken was the wrong word. Changed might be more apt. Giving birth had changed her body, making it curvier and fuller in places than before. It had also forced her to face the grim reality of her future as a new mother with no prospects. Sure, Robin had a bow and could outshoot most rangers, but that wouldn't put a roof over her daughter's head not when a stupid law controlled the number of rangers a settlement could hire. The last rejection she'd received echoed in her mind as Robin twirled the arrow around her index finger. Sorry, lass. We've got no room for anyone else on the roster, the hatchet-faced lieutenant had told her 4 days ago. But he'd let her pitch a tent outside the Rangers' barracks while she tried to figure out where to go next. Can't have a woman and her baby sleep on a bunk in a house full of men. No, sir. That just wouldn't be seemly. So Robin had lit out of that forgotten town the next morning without a thought for the weather. She aimed for a spot well away from her baby and her still snoring tent mate and threw the broken arrow into the darkness. Strella was out cold from the grueling hike up the mountainside, which had become a desperate scramble over icy rocks as the storm raging outside had closed in on them. Robin was just as exhausted, but her mind refused to quiet down and let her sleep. So she stared into the darkness again, consumed by worry. Would Mount Eredrin be any different? It was perhaps another 2 days hike, depending on the conditions of the trail, and what Mother Nature had in store for her tomorrow. Mount Eredrin was also the next closest settlement, and far larger than the two she'd already tried. Will they have a place for me? Or will they just be as full up as the last one? Robin asked aloud, even though only her baby was listening. As she shifted on her pallet, that question hung there in the darkness, tormenting her. Robin rubbed her aching breasts through her red leather brigandine, though calling the uncomfortably cold thing she lay on a pallet was a misnomer. Handfuls of pine needles and leaves on the frozen ground, with a couple of blankets thrown over them, hardly counted as a fit surface for sleeping. But it was the only accommodation available this deep in the hinterlands. Rosalie whimpered in her sleep, reminding Robin she wasn't alone in her discomfort. I know, girl. This was a bad idea. I should have toughed it out until spring. Robin sighed and pushed away that regret. It couldn't warm her or her baby. Outside, the wind howled as it buffeted the tent again. The storm must be intensifying, but the tent's construction was sound enough to withstand its onslaught. Thank God that was wholly for that small mercy. In the silence between gusts, snow blanketed the precipice and covered the trail she'd hike tomorrow. I really must start thinking ahead instead of reacting. A little forethought could have landed us in a much better position. But her gut had told Robin to grab her daughter and go, and she hadn't questioned it. Maybe she should have. Rosalie grunted, even though she was too young to understand. She was probably just responding to the tone of her voice. Robin wasn't sure she'd made the right decision. At 20, she was a single mother with no home, no job, and nothing to her name but the baby listening to her rant and the rucksack under her head. A tear squeezed out before she could stop it. She wanted to scream, but Rosalie beat her to it. Robin snapped out of her funk into full mother mode. She might have screwed up their lives for the time being, but she would be the best damn mother despite that. Don't cry, sweetheart. Mama's here. I'll fix whatever's wrong, I promise. Robin swiped another tear from her eyes and levered herself up, but stopped halfway when a cold, hard object touched her throat. What the? A knife resolved out of the shadows, and above it, two startlingly bright green eyes appeared. They seemed to float in the darkness above Robin. Watery light crept into the tent, revealing the rest of the intruder, and she was definitely not human. Robin wanted to kick herself for not hearing the strange creature's approach. That's what she got for letting her insecurities out to play when she should have been on guard. Damn it, she was the daughter of a ranger. This bitch should not have gotten the drop on her or her tent mate, but she had, and Strella was still dead asleep. If Rosalie's scream hadn't even woken her, would Robin's? Probably not. And the idea of screaming for help like she was some waif in need of a rescue galled Robin. Her pride wouldn't allow it as she matched stares with the intruder, who was not as solidly built as she was. If she could just get her hands on a knife. Robin hid a smile as a plan formed. Don't move, the green-eyed creature said. Who are you? Robin asked, risking a slice, but the knife didn't bite into her exposed flesh. Did that mean this creature hadn't come to kill her? I said not to move. The knife didn't waver as it pressed into Robin's neck, and drew a bead of blood. Point taken. As Robin lay back against her makeshift pallet, she let her arm slide up until her hand touched the rolled up tunics inside the rucksack she'd been using as a pillow. Robin had unbound her hair earlier, and it hung in a straight dark fall over her shoulder, covering her arm and the hand she shoved into those tunics seeking a weapon. And I asked you a question. Who are you? While Robin waited for an answer, she grasped the bone handle of her knife, but didn't draw it out of the rolled up tunics, hiding it from view. Her captor hadn't told her to be quiet, and anger was coiling in her gut like a serpent ready to strike. Robin managed to keep that anger out of her voice, but not her eyes. They blazed with righteous indignation. They blazed with righteous indignation and a promise of retribution, but the fierce look was lost on her captor because there was only a little light filtering into the tent through the unsecured flap. It was enough to backlight her captor, but not Robin, since the creature's shadow fell across her. The temperature dropped as the tent flap parted again, letting in a cold gust of wind and a triangle of pale moonlight. Said light glinted off the buckles holding her assailant's outfit in place as the womanish creature chuckled. Metal discs connected by silver rings clothed the creature, holding a knife to Robin's throat, if you could call that get-up clothing. The metallic ensemble ended at the creature's midriff. A divided skirt picked up where that left off, but it petered out well above a pair of hooves, not feet. Well, wasn't that interesting? Enough to finally clear out the last cobwebs from the restless night. Silver hooves, the sight triggered a vague memory, but it fled when a pair of pale green eyes that glowed captured hers. The creature leaning over her grinned, showing off a set of perfect teeth. She was part deer and part human and just plain creepy. What do you want? Robin gripped the knife hidden under the makeshift pillow under her head. She'd managed to work her whole hand under there without drawing her captor's notice. Unsheathing it would be tricky, but she felt better with a weapon in hand, even if she couldn't use it yet. Years of training and ingrained muscle memory should help her land at least one solid blow, even in this dim lighting. All she needed was an opening. Come on, bitch, give me one. I think you know what I want. Her visitor traced the tip of her knife along Robin's throat. I ride the longest night where no light but mine shines. Pay the toll or heads will roll. The rhyme struck a chord in Robin's memory. So did the silver horns curving up from either side of her attacker's heart-shaped face. The thing was part of the wild hunt. Oh, crap. Robin stared at her long-necked captor, who bore more than a passing resemblance to a deer, except hinds didn't usually have horns, just stags did. Brown fur so fine it blended to look like human skin kept her exposed bits warm, and there was a generous portion of her curves so exposed to the elements. A riot of brown curls tumbled down the huntress's back, and a leather band kept those locks out of her eerie eyes. They were pale green mirrors reflecting Robin's growing horror. The wild's hunt. Oh God, anything but those monsters. Robin looked away, disconcerted by the promise of pain in those eyes. Her nightmare was just beginning. Before it ended, whose lives would it claim? Not my baby. Please, Mother of God, protect her. Rosalie wasn't crying anymore, and the silence inside the tent was becoming as oppressive as the shifting shadows sliding over the huntress's sleek fur. A tear slid down Robin's cheek at the thought of her sweet daughter lying in the bassinet beside her pallet, and the huntress grinned. Outside, the wind howled and pummeled the tent with invisible fists as it gusted past again. By some miracle, the tent stayed up despite the onslaught. What do you want? Robin asked again because she needed an answer. Your life, your death, either will suffice. The huntress shrugged, as if she had no preference nor any skin in this game. Nearby, metal clanged and a woman grunted. That must be Cat. Or had some unlucky band of adventurers lucked onto their camp? Rescue might be only seconds away. It was possible. This trail had looked well-traveled before a storm had dropped a foot of snow on it. Robin had seen enough evidence to corroborate that assumption, or she wouldn't have made camp here. And they were heading for one of the most trafficked waterways in the country, the River Nearthal. Some of her hopes must have written themselves on her face because the huntress threw back her head and laughed again. The bitch thinks she has me cowed. Not likely, since her father was a ranger. He'd be scandalized to see his daughter so easily taken. Robin took advantage of that momentary inattention to swing her knife up and out of hiding. It slammed into the huntress's blade, shoving it aside. Then Robin was rolling aside to avoid that next blow and move the fight away from the bassinet and her too quiet daughter. She'd have to check on Rosalie after the fight. She couldn't risk doing so now. The huntress scowled as she danced aside to avoid the kick Robin aimed at her. She must drive that creature away from her daughter. Robin frowned when her booted foot didn't connect with its intended target. Damn, she had so looked forward to sinking her cleated soul into that creature's face. Well, at least she'd put some space between them. But Robin was still on the ground, which was as bad a place to be a moment later when an enraged huntress stomped down on her with cloven hooves. Robin threw her knife, missed the skinny deer woman, damn that canny bitch, and had to roll quickly out of the way as another silver hoof aimed at her abdomen. Robin slammed into another body. Thankfully, this one was supine and much taller than she was. Oh, thank God. Fate, or whoever was listening, an ally at last. Robin shook the blanket-covered bundle for all she was worth, hoping her fellow traveler was still alive and armed. The two warrior women sharing her campsite were a lucky find. Fortunately, they decided to team up with Robin for a while. What luck that was. 3 women traveling together made a less enticing target, especially when they were all armed. Wake up! We're under attack! Strella groaned and rolled onto her side, batting Robin's hands away. How could anyone sleep through this? Strella must really be exhausted. Then let Kat deal with it. It's her watch. Mine just ended. Strella mumbled into her arm. Get up before you wake up as a shade in the gray between life and death. But Strella just ignored her. Strella just snored. Damn her. All that hiking must have caught up with her. Robin ducked, and a knife just missed her head. She grabbed the first thing that came to hand, a rucksack, and thrust it in front of her like a shield. Why had she sacrificed her knife earlier? Robin could just imagine the lecture her father would have given her if he'd been there. Stupid, stupid. She was better than this. The huntress slit the bag open, spilling woolen socks onto the canvas floor. But it stopped her next jab before that wicked blade could do more than graze Robin's red leather brigandine. Robin grabbed a relieved breath when the huntress frowned. Having some trouble? Robin asked when the huntress couldn't jiggle her blade free. No, that was more like it. Robin smiled. The huntress's knife was caught on something inside the rucksack, so Robin shoved the sack at the huntress's face, and the back of the creature's head thwacked her pert little nose. And the back of the creature's hand thwacked her pert little nose. You bitch, seethed the now bleeding huntress. Yeah, cry me a river. It's just a little nosebleed, and maybe a broken nose too, but Robin wasn't sure about that since her opponent wasn't completely human. Robin chuckled. Robin chucked another bag at the huntress to keep her off balance. The bassinet was nowhere in sight, but Rosalie was here somewhere. She must be. The tent wasn't that large, so why hadn't she made so much as a peep since the fight had begun? Rosalie? Panic bloomed in her chest as Robin shoved another bag into the path of the lunging huntress. It was half the size of a person and just as wide. When the huntress dodged it, her hooves caught on a tangle of wet clothes Strella must have stripped off her after her watch. And that dear woman went down. Good, maybe she'd stay tangled up for a little while. Robin nudged her traveling companion again in passing. Get up, Death's here for a dance, let's give her one. But Strella didn't rise from her blankets at that stirring speech, nor did the large lump under the blanket budge when Robin shoved her a third time. Where was Kat? Was she still fighting out there? How many more of these creeps were there? In answer, the wind screamed through the mountain pass and pummeled the tent again, ripping one of the tent poles out of the ground. Robin wrestled with yards of unruly canvas as the tent suddenly embraced her. The huntress crouched, making a smaller target for the wind-whipped canvas to strike until the wind calmed. When it did, the tent listed to one side. One more blow would knock it down, then Rosalie would be unprotected from the elements. The huntress remained hunched and partially hidden by the sagging canvas. She withdrew a second knife from her sheath. Where was the first one? Nice knife. I'll take it from your cold, dead fingers. Robin shoved loose canvas out of her sightline. I'd love to see you try. The huntress extended a forked black tongue and licked her blade, The bloody thing had canine teeth running along its edge, and it looked as hungry for blood as its wielder. Oh, goody. Not only would she die, but she might end up on the menu tonight. What the hell have I gotten myself into now? Robin wondered aloud. She thought she'd left all her troubles behind when she lit out on the trail seeking a new life. Apparently not. Cold seeped through Robin's clothes as she fumbled through her gear for a weapon or something to throw. Anything would do. Her bow case would be great right now. It was wooden and as long as a quarterstaff. Where was it? Her numb fingers turned up baby paraphernalia, but no bassinet, baby, or bow case. Damn it, where were they? Where's my baby? The question hung between them while Robin's thoughts spun in a tight, terrified circle. She shut down that line of thought before panic turned her into a gibbering wreck and tossed 3 dirty diapers and a rattle in quick succession. The huntress dodged the cloth poo bombs, but caught the rattle and did a suggestive hip wiggle before pocketing it. She smirked at Robin, and her eyes glinted in the half dark. Robin swallowed, and fear burned all the way down to the worried fist clenched in her belly. Where's my daughter? A heavy weight slammed into Robin, knocking her down onto her belly as a new combatant barreled into the tent, collapsing it. A second and third creature followed him, and several hooves stepped on her back before Robin could roll out of the way. Only the tough leather of her brigandine kept those hooves from biting into her flesh. Pain lit Robin up, but it was a dull roar compared to the fear for her daughter squeezing her chest. Please don't trample her. She's just a baby. Robin tried to throw her arms over her head to shield it, but she was all tangled up in the tent canvas. Something hard collided with her head, and the world winnowed away as an ululating war cry rang out. Strella, did you finally get up? Robin tried to ask, but everything faded to black before she could get the words out. Forget me. Save my baby. Robin sent that wordless plea into the darkness to anyone who was listening. Then she finally passed out. And that was the first chapter of Hunter's Night, which is the first book in the Robin of Larkspur series. So Robin's daughter was just kidnapped, and she's going to have to find her. But there's a few complications. Her daughter is not the only one the Wild Hunt kidnapped. They also kidnapped Sarn's son. That would be Sarn from the Cursebreaker series. So they kidnapped Ran when Ran was a baby. So obviously, once Sarn finds out about that, which happens in the next few chapters, he's going to want to go after him. And so once Robin regains consciousness and finds out her daughter is missing, she also finds out that Kat, this other swordswoman who was staying with them, was wounded. She tried to fight off the Wild Hunt, but she was outnumbered. And so they need to get her help. And there's no clues to follow. The snow and the wind have wiped away all trace of the Wild Hunt, so they don't know where to go or what to do. So that's their first thing, is to get out of the mountains, get down to Mount Eredrin, because there's a city under Mount Eredrin, and get Kat to a healer and find somebody who can help her track down the Wild Hunt and get her kids back. So in book 2 of the Robin of Larkspur series, and that book is Rogue Knight, Robin is finally at Mount Eredrin, and she's trying to get help for her friend and for herself. And she eventually meets Sarn, and they decide to team up. But Sarn has sworn to serve the Rangers and to do whatever they tell him. And they had told him previously not to leave the mountain, or not to leave its vicinity. So he can't go any further than like a mile or so from the mountain. And that's not going to be enough to get the kids back. So he needs to wrangle a permission out of his superiors without telling them that he has a son, because they don't know, and they don't find out until book 9 of the Cursebreaker series. And that book is Cursebreaker Revealed. So the Robin of Larkspur series is set 4 years before the Cursebreaker series. So at that time, nobody knew about Ran. And so that's book 2. And then in book 3, they set out. Sarn is an earth mage, and it's all in the books, but he has a connection to his son, and he uses that to track him. And since the same people kidnapped his son, kidnapped Robin's daughter, that works out just fine. So they're crossing the winter wonderland that is Sherry. Sherry is covered by an enchanted forest. So in the wintertime, it's very snowy, and it's not the easiest place to travel around in the winter. So they go, and there's the search. But there's the Wild Hunt have been, well, they've kind of enslaved a group of werewolves, and so they sick the werewolves on them, trying to stop them because they need the children for a spell. But the spell it's a summoning spell, and they're trying to summon someone very powerful from somewhere that person should not ever be able to escape. So it needs to be powerful, the spell, and it's a very complicated spell. So they need time. So the werewolves are to buy them time. So they have to deal with that. And they finally, and also it's not just Sarn and Robin. Someone else goes with them, and that causes a lot of drama. So there's infighting amongst them. And yeah, so at the end of book 3, which is Rogue Rangers, they have the party has split up, and Robin is on her own, Sarn is on his own, and the person who came with them is sort of stuck due to some decisions that they made that pissed off the forest. And they have found a place where they can shelter, where the forest can't attack them, and so they have to just sit and wait. So that's the situation. And then in book 4, which is coming out on my birthday, which is Sunday, March 10th, that's going to be called Rogue Rescue. In Rogue Rescue, our heroes have separately reached the place where the children are, and their overriding goal is to get to them. So they get to them, but neither Robin nor Sarn had any sort of plan for how to get the kids and get out of there and get back to Mount Eredrin, to where there's warmth and food and some measure and shelter and some measure of safety. They have no plan for this. So they get caught up in that spell, and they have to figure out how to break out of it. And then I don't think it's spoiled to say that they do, because if you read any of my books, like, that's a foregone conclusion. But what happens after that is, I won't give that away, but there's a chase scene, because obviously the Wild Hunt is going to be really pissed off that they escape the kids and break the spell, and they can't get someone who they wanted. They can't get what they want. So, so obviously they don't want Robin and Sarn to get what they wanted, which was their kids back. So there's this chase through the winter forest, which I have wanted to write for like 5 years. So the beginning part of the book, them actually getting there and saving the kid, is very short, because the whole point of this was that chase scene that I wanted to write for so long, and I had so much fun with that. And it is the first 3 books in the beginning of book 4 are they were difficult to write, but the chase scene was just pure fun. So like I would say that the chase scene and all the scenes after that is probably about 60% of the book, maybe a bit more. And that was just pure fun to write. And from the feedback that I've gotten, it's a very small pool. I only have one beta reader, that last 60% was like the best. Not because it's like, I hope it's the best written. I always try to write every book so that, each one is better than the last. But because it was a return to it's fun. It is, it's not fun for the characters, but it is fun to read because, Sarn is flinging magic all over the place. He and Robin have to separate. So she is trying to figure out how to get back to Mount Eredrin. She still, she does have some magic, but it's not as useful as Sarn's is. And he's off trying to distract the Wild Hunt. I don't care if I'm giving away spoilers. I'm not telling you how they're doing it. And that's why I hope you're going to go over and read it to find out, how are they going to do this? And then when they get back to the mountain, you know, they promise to report back to tell, you know, the Rangers what's going on, and neither of them want to do that. So there's a whole cat and mouse sequence, which if you read any of the Kurzweger books, we have it's a requirement that there has to be some cat and mouse thing where the head of the Rangers wants them to report and they don't want to report. And yeah, it's just, I love it. I love that part. I wish it hadn't taken so much to get to that, but it was just, I don't know. Well, there's just so much to it. And there's actually 2 versions of Rogue Rescue, which is book 4 of the Robin of Larkspur series. And the reason for that is I had to write Rogue Rescue at the same time that I was writing the second book of the Rogue Gods trilogy. And that book is called Summon the Gods, because they summon gods. And I don't recommend that you do that. So if you're planning on summoning anything, like, don't summon people of power. It's not a good idea. The results are not, you're not gonna get what you want. Anyways, yeah. So the 2 books crossed over, so I had to write them at the same time. And I publish every chapter that I write in the order that I write it on Patreon. So right now on Patreon, there's, oh God, how many books are there's half of Chasing Dragons, which is book 11 of the Cursebreaker series, which I will get to why it isn't finished, and I'm annoyed at this because there's some really fun stuff in there. There's the entire book of Gateway to Hell, which is the first book of the Rogue Gods trilogy. There is the entire book for Rogue Rescue, and it is the author's cut, or the original version, which has all of the scenes that cross over with Summon the Gods. The retail version has a lot that's all toned down so that Robin's journey and her adventure takes precedence, and anything that is not quite part of that is glossed over. You don't see as much, because the parts that where the 2 books cross over, most of that is in Summon the Gods, because it pertained, like, Summon the Gods is about the gods that got, I don't care if I'm giving away spoilers. It's about the gods that got summoned, and somebody is coming there to stop this because it causes a huge problem that screws up the timeline and causes a demon invasion in the future and just messes things up for later for the characters. So okay, so we've got Rogue Rescue is on Patreon, all of it. Gateway to Hell, which is the first book of the Rogue Gods. Summon the Gods, which is book 2 of the Rogue Gods trilogy. There is, or there will be, when this, I don't know, whenever this publishes, there'll be, okay, by my birthday, by that evening, that's Sunday night, which is March 10th, it'll be 12 chapters from Storm the Gates, which is the 3rd book in the Rogue Gods trilogy. There's also half of Chasing Dragons. So yeah, so there's like almost 5 books right now published on Patreon, because they cross over each other. That was not my decision. The characters decided. It's not Robin. Robin was not involved in this decision. She does not like the fact that it crossed over. I'm with her on that. Sauron's not thrilled that it crossed over. You'll see his reaction in Chasing Dragons. But other characters decided that we had to do this ridiculous crossover. So yeah, and the reason only half of Chasing Dragons, which is going to be book 11 of the Cursebreaker series, is not finished, because, you know, there's 11 books in the Cursebreaker series for a reason. They're easy, they're fun to write. I wouldn't say they're easy. They're fun to write, and I love writing them. I could write them nonstop, but I don't, because I mean, sometimes the characters need a timeout. They need to write other things, but which makes Rand very unhappy, which is why he clawed his way into the Rogue Gods trilogy. He wasn't supposed to be in there. He was not supposed to be the main character for the 3rd book of the Rogue Gods trilogy, but here we are. He does not follow instructions. He does not respect outlines. He does not care that the trilogy was not supposed to have him or his dad in it. It was supposed to be, yeah. Well, anyways, so we're not gonna. I could be here all day if we talk about the stories that Ren has gotten himself into and his dad. Yeah. So book 11, which is Chasing Dragons, crosses over with actually book 3 of the Rogue Gods trilogy, Storm the Gates. At least that's what the characters tell me, that there's a connection between them. That they're going to intersect at some point. They have not yet. I am writing chapter 12 right after this for Storm the Gates, which is book 3 of the Rogue Gods trilogy. And they haven't yet crossed, but not Ren, but the other characters keep telling me that they are going to cross, and that once that cross has happened, I can then finish Chasing Dragons, which I would really like to do. It's such a fun book. Durlo chases dragons. Like, that's literally most of the story. He chases dragons. And if you want to know why, you'll have to wait for that book. And how the dragons react to that, you'll have to read that book. It's too fun. I am not giving any spoilers on that one. So, yeah, so that's what's going on there. And I lost where I was going with this. Ren's not the only one who digresses. I do it too. Oh, right. I was talking about like what's currently on Patreon and why there's 2 versions of Rogue Rescue. Thank you, Rand, for reminding me. Yes, I know you want me to talk about you and only you, but we can't do that. The podcast is about fantasy in general, not about you. Go away right now so I can finish the interview. Well, I'm interviewing myself. Sorry about that. Fictional characters don't always respect privacy. Oh, you don't know what the meaning of the word is? Look, this is not a good time right now, right? You have to come back later and we can. Yes, I know the scene I'm supposed to be writing is about you, but I'm talking to our listeners about the books. Because if they don't know about the books, they can't buy the books. And if they don't buy the books, then I can't make more books. So, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so that's why. So there's 2 versions of Rogue Rescue. There's the retail version, which is what's going to be sold on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, Google Play, Smashwords, Barnes and Noble, maybe some other places. And that version focuses on Robin's story and minimizes anything that is outside of it, anything that's more that is dealt with in the Rogue Gods trilogy. So, but there isn't the original version, which is the versions that I wrote on Patreon when I was still trying to figure out where are these characters going with all of this. And that does include a lot of scenes and things where Robin deals with versions of characters from different timelines and sees more of what's going on with the summoning and the Rogue Gods. She does interact with one of them in the retail version. That's in both versions, the retail version and that, because that scene I felt needed to be in there because it is also in Summon the Gods from the Rogue Gods point of view, and he's literally talking to Robin, telling her kind of giving her a warning and telling her about some of what's going on and why she needs to get her kid and get out of there. And I felt that was important to keep in. But that's the only part where that's really the only part. Yeah. So, but the difference between the 2 versions is only about like 4,000 to 5,000 words. The original version is the longer version. So the original version is only on Patreon because that's where it was written, and it's better to read that in situ because I was writing the 2 books side by side. So patrons they were reading both Rogue Rescue and Summon the Gods like at the same time because I was going back and forth chapter by chapter, the parts where they overlapped. And the parts they overlapped is the end, the last act in Some of the Gods and the beginning of Rogue Rescue. Once the two stories diverged from each other, then I stopped writing them simultaneously. I finished Rogue Rescue because I have desperately wanted to write that damn chase scene, and there was nothing going to stop me from getting to that. I've wanted to write it for 5 years. It's been sitting in my brain, and it needed to get out. And then I went back and finished Some of the Gods. So hope that wasn't confusing. There's a note in the beginning of the book that explains all this, maybe better than I just did, and probably in less detail. But yeah, that's the situation. And it's the wild thing is that I just found out yesterday that my niece might be born on my birthday this Sunday, the day that book 4 of Robin's series publishes, which is just an amazing coincidence. She was originally due to be born the very end of March, early April, but you know, events for the mother's health, it's better, and the baby's health, that she be induced and born this weekend. So it's just, so reading that first chapter where Robin's baby is kidnapped was like, and knowing that my niece is coming is into this world and I'll find out her name after she's born is just, it's just like the coincidence just boggles my mind a little bit, but I'm very happy about it. I wouldn't mind sharing my birthday at all. I'm not selfish like that. One of my best friends in college, shout out to Melissa. If you're listening, you probably aren't, but if you are, Mel, hey, what's up? She was also born March 10th, like I was. Same year as me. We were exactly the same age. We're just born a few hours apart in like different states, which I thought was pretty amazing. And I've known other people who have the same birthday, March 10th, as myself. And I always found that amazing and cool. So I don't mind sharing my birthday. I think that's going to be wild. I know some people who would not want to share their birthday, which is like, come on, like it's not possible for you to be the only person in a given year to be born on a certain day. Like that's not possible unless maybe you're born on like leap year or something. But usually like there's all around the world, people are born every day. So you're sharing your birthday with many people. So yeah, since the guest couldn't make it tonight, I wanted to, and I've been just dying to talk about this because like the coincidence, and I'm really happy about it. I'm happy the book is coming out. I'm happy I got to do the chase scene. I think, and it's better than I imagined it would be. I was able to take it in directions that I hadn't previously thought that I could. And it harkens back to a flashback in book, I believe it was book 6, Cursebaker Hidden. Book 6 of the Cursebaker series. There's a scene in there that I was able to pull into this because he's flashing back to something that happened in the same time frame. So that's pretty cool. So I had to change the scene a little because I didn't realize, I originally thought that they were going to have to travel much further to save the children. So like where Mount Eredrin sits, there aren't any other mountains around. It's just like, it's like the Lonely Mountain in Lord of the Rings. It's just chilling. I think it's a dormant volcano. So there are not other mountains around it. It's just kind of there. Mount Racine is like 20-ish miles away, and there's other mountains, but they're pretty far away. You can see them on the horizon, but they're not close. And I realized in writing book 3, Rogue Rangers, there was no way they were going to be able to travel enough miles to reach those mountains where I thought the scene was going to take. There was just no way. That was just not possible. So I had to change the scene a little bit. So instead of them being on a mountain, they're hanging from a cliff. So, and I have a note in the book explaining that, but there was just, when you read Rogue Rescue, which is book 3 of the Robin of Larkspur series, you'll see there's absolutely no way the fact that they got 10 miles from Mount Eredrin is a flipping miracle. because, without murdering each other. There was just no way they were going to get any further. That was the absolute limit that I could take them before we started stretching credibility way too far. So we're like, I couldn't conceive of them being any way for them to travel further. There was just no way. Maybe if they did it by magical means, but because they split up after a few miles, like, that was just not going to be possible because I needed Robin to get there, and she did not have a magical way of getting there after she split up from Sarn. So, and Sarn doesn't teleport for the first time until Cursebreaker Enchanted. There's a scene where Rand calls him and he basically teleports to him, and it doesn't quite work because he doesn't know how to do it, and it freaks him out. He doesn't understand what it is that he did. So it had to be close enough that he would just walk at that point. So I had to move the location a bit. Yeah, so that's what's going on. And then the next release after Rogue Rescue will be the Rogue Gods trilogy. I was hoping for April, but I was also hoping that the third book in the Rogue Gods trilogy would be like shorter than the others, because the first book was 115,000 words, which is like 400 pages ish, and book 2 is like also like over 100,000 words, so also around 400 pages. So I was hoping book 3 would be like more in the 300 page range, that we could get it wrapped up and have fun doing it. But they said, it's supposed to cross over with another book, and it hasn't done that. We're already in chapter 12, and there is no crossover happening. So I'm scared that it's going to run over 100,000 words, and I work full time, so I try to write as much as I can, but I'm also doing the formatting for the Rogue Gods trilogy. I just formatted the first book in the Rogue Gods trilogy, Gateway to Hell. It has every chapter, and there's 47 of them, has a color image, a color illustration for the chapter heading. This is for the paperback, because I'm not sure we have space in the paperback because it's just that one book. And there's also, because I wanted all of the chapter heads to be on the right hand page, so that, because I was looking at all the books that I bought, and that's how they do it, like when they're being fancy. And sometimes the chapters don't end so that the next one can start on a right-hand page. Sometimes they end on a right-hand page, so then the next chapter starts on a left-hand page. But that left-hand page is on the flip side of the previous right-hand page. And so I didn't want that. So I was looking at other books that I bought, and they have black and white illustrations, full page illustrations for that. So that's what the direction that I went. So this was a beast to do the formatting for. And I have to shout out to my first real job out of college for teaching me how to do this kind of layout. So shout out to the Arts Council. I think they have a different name now. But they were the Arts Council for the county that I live in when I worked for them for 3 years. And yeah, so I need to do layout for the formatting for Some of the Gods and finish the editing for that, because it's finished, and it is 50 something chapters long, 55, 54. So it's longer. And also write Storm the Gates. I hope we're storming some gates. We're at chapter 12, and there are gates, but no one's storming them yet. The army's en route, but it hasn't hit there yet. So I hope that's happening soon. For my peace of mind, because I like to title things by like stuff that actually goes on in the book, like in Gateway to Hell. There are lots of gateways. They go to hell. There's just lots of shenanigans with these gateways. And in Some of the Gods, there's lots of shenanigans and summoning of ex-gods throughout the book. And so Storm the Gates, we need to have gates, and we need to have an army storming them. Preferably more than once. So characters need to get on that. And yeah, I'm gonna do this as a Kickstarter because I want to do I wanted to do these pretty editions, and I'm trying to figure out something pretty for the hardcover book. I just emailed the printer that I like, Book Vault. They have printers in the UK and the US. I actually ordered a um, proof of Gateway to Hell, the paperback version from Book Vault's US printers. I chose US, so I should have that by the end of March. So I'm really excited to see that, so I can check to see did I get the bleed right. Which the bleed just means you have to add extra space, but then you have to readjust all the margins so no text gets cut off. And the reason you add the bleed is so that the images because all the images go to the edge of the page, so that when the book is trimmed after it's printed, nothing in nothing is cut off that's supposed to be, and things that go to the edge of the page actually go to the edge. So they don't have a previewer, so I was guessing based on I started with the same margins that I used for Stars and Angels Sing, because that was also printed by them. But it wasn't, I felt like it wasn't enough margin. I didn't quite get it. It was a little tight on there, tighter than I would have liked. It looks nice, but I like there to be more of a margin on the edge so you can hold the book and your thumbs don't cover the text while you're trying to read it. So I was trying to get a fatter margin this time so you can hold the book without covering anything important with your fingers, because it's important you got to hold the book open to be able to read. So we'll see. So I'm really hoping that turns out that I got it right this time. So I sat there like crunching the numbers, trying to figure this out, and I hope I got it right this time. And I sent the printer a email asking like what options do they have to make, so I can try and make the omnibus, which is going to be hardcover, really special. I mean, there's going to be the dust jacket, and there'll be different art this time on the case. So the dust jacket and the actual physical book itself will have different art on the cover. And then I don't know how much art they'll be able to be inside the book, because I don't want it to be like insanely long, and like it's going to be at least 800 or 900 pages, like, and over 150 chapters, which is not going to be fun to format, but it will take one for the team. Yeah. So, but I don't know that I'm going to get enough orders to do a print run. So I'm trying to figure out how do we make this really pretty and special within the limits of what print on demand can do. So I sent them an email to ask like what they have, this thing called premium, but I don't know what that means. There's no information. So I fired off an email to find out like what is a premium hardback? Like what option is that? How do I format for it? What can I do with this? So more about that soon. Yeah, and that's basically what's going on. I'm writing. I'm expecting a new niece. My birthday is Sunday, March 10th. And yeah, just floating along, writing the books. After I finish the Rogue Gods trilogy, I don't think anybody would be surprised that I will be writing the next Cursebreaker books. And the next ones in line are finishing Chasing Dragons, editing the parts of Joust that I've already written and adding in the new material to make it fit within the like 11 books that were not supposed to be before it, but do exist. So that's next. So I can complete the 4th trilogy for the Cursebreaker series. And then we get to the biggest, something that I have been looking forward to for a really long time, which is writing the book where Sarn turns 21 and his magic goes berserk. I cannot wait to write that book. So that will be either the first book of a sequel series to the Cursebreaker series, or it will be book number 13. So that will be exciting. And I like that it'll be the 13th Cursebreaker book. However, I like that. I think that's awesome. And then after that, I can finally do the Thanksgiving and the Christmas story, because they happen right after that. And then I can write all new material, because I will have exhausted. No, I still have a couple other stories that I wrote about Sarn and his son that I have not edited and published. So I'll have to pull those out and see where they fit. Do they fit? Yeah. So that's what's coming. And I also plan to finish write and publish the sequels to Relic Hunter. So I've not forgotten. The characters just did not want to. They just didn't want to. They didn't want to do anything. I can't write the sequel if they don't want to. If they're not going to tell me what happens. So I'm working on convincing them to get back together and let's finish out that trilogy. And then I have like a bunch of things that I want to write. A sequel to the Rogue Gods trilogy. It won't be a direct sequel. It'll involve some of the characters, but maybe not all of them. I'm not sure. Or they may all just show up. I'm not sure. And the War in Heaven a trilogy of books about the War in Heaven. But that's probably a little bit later. And then, more Cursebreaker books, obviously. I love them. And Storm Spells, the third book in the Cursebreaker Companion series. Yeah, that. And I want to get all the stories that have been in the newsletter out, either in an anthology or something, so we can have new ones in the newsletter. That's the only reason we stopped doing them, is that there's so many that I was starting to lose track of, like where we were in that separate alternative timeline. And so I want to get those out probably in 2025. That's what I'm thinking. So they can start having new adventures in there, because then we'll have the whole storyline will be out in the books, and it'll be, because right now they're all across like hundreds of blog posts, and it's like, it's going to be a nightmare pulling it all together, but I can start writing new ones. And I'm just focusing on the end, the goal, which is getting it out so I can have new adventures in the newsletter, because I missed that. I missed there being some shenanigans that the characters are involved in that's in the newsletter separate from the books. There just got to be so many of them that I've completely lost track. So I want to go through and do it, and some of them I want to expand. Well, I think it's fun. And yeah, so I'd like to return to that. Yeah, that's it. So we'll be back tomorrow. I'm recording this on March 8th, which is International Women's Day. So hooray to all the women. I'm not really sure what you say, like Happy International Women's Day, although it's kind of a bittersweet celebration, because the day was created back when women were fighting for their rights, and we're still fighting for our rights. We still don't have equal pay. We still don't have equality in a lot of areas. It's still harder for women to get loans, especially women of color. And it's not fair. It's not right. But so maybe we can all take this International Women's Day to think about how we can help move that forward, or if, not be a barrier. If you're in a position where you're looking at someone's loan applications or something, maybe think twice. Don't just dismiss it out of hand. Ask yourself, if this was a man, would I still be dismissing this? or would I still be paying them less or not giving them this offer? Yeah, and go out and support women authors. Not, I mean, I'm a woman author. You can support me, but you know, there's many others. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening, and yeah, I'll be back tomorrow with an interview. I already talked to tomorrow's guest, and she is raring to go. So there will it won't be just me tomorrow. Have a great night or a great day wherever you are. I'm Melinda Kucsera, your indie fantasy author. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.